Hey, what's going on, everybody? Second-rate reporter Jesse Montano here, going to be joined by Meghan Angley in just a moment. Today was supposed to be all about the Atlantic Division as we're continuing to move through our division previews, but the word is out. Breaking news. The Colorado Avalanche have brought Joel Kiviranta back. We'll be talking about that today on the show. Of course, I got to start by reminding you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Head on over to trustedamerican.com/sports. They want to help you lower your interest rate, get a better monthly payment. Who doesn't want their interest rate lowered right now? Head on over to trustedamerican.com/sports. See how much money they can help you start saving today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley, fresh out of the crease. Meghan was in between the pipes this morning. We'll definitely talk more about that in a moment. Meghan, some breaking news today. They've been helping us out this summer. They've been choosing to do a lot of their business before 1:30 p.m., which has made it easier for us to make sure we're not missing anything that is going on with the Colorado Avalanche. They did re-sign Joel Kiviranta, but I don't even care about that right now. I want to know is, how's your week? I saw you yesterday, but how's your week been?
Well, great, because I got to fulfill a little bit of a dream today by putting on the goalie gear and being in net very briefly. So it's kind of hard to top that high of the whole week because it came today, just like 30 minutes ago.
And she would have been in net longer, but the person whose goalie helmet she was borrowing really could have benefited from a 43-degree hockey bag.
No kidding. This is going to make for a great testimonial. And no disrespect to the goalie whose gear this belongs to. It just isn't my bacteria. So it's hard to wear it. And you're just, you're acutely aware of it. It's hard to ignore. I got sweaty.
Got sweaty, but it was we had a ton of fun out there on the ice today. Making Meghan's dreams come true. That's what we're here to do. Let's go ahead and roll that right there, John. Boom! Hit the super chat. The goalie gear thing was my fault, I fear. Yeah, it probably was vaguely. I haven't texted you back this morning, but I got a plethora of texts from Vaguely yesterday talking about all the new goalie gear rules, all of which Meghan was in complete compliance with today. But I'm trying to get some of these pictures pulled up real quick because you looked like a natural out there, Meghan.
I can't wait to see too. I know we have me in the full gear, like with the stick, glove, blocker, and helmet on. That will come about soon. There's video, of course, as well.
Right. We've got we've got a full video coming on it here pretty soon. Well, soon, whenever Chloe's done with it, I guess, is when it'll be ready. But yeah, so we had some fun this morning, but as we were out there, the Avs, we said yesterday in the office here that we knew that there was at least one more move coming down the pipeline, that the Avs, I mean, they couldn't head into the season with the roster that they had constructed, especially in the bottom half there. And so in an attempt to address that, the Avs went out and re-signed. Actually, hold on. Before we get too far into this, I'm getting these photos loaded in here. And I just want to
prioritize.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Do you guys want to hear me sing Joel Kiviranta's name? Joel
there it is.
Kiviranta.
Really good. There's Meghan, the goalie. They're changing the e-bug rules. Surprise, Meghan's it. She's the full-time e-bug here in Colorado. But you look like a goalie.
That is a little insulting. No, I'm just kidding. Someone said, the weird goalie energy was there all along. I just didn't see it till now.
Yeah, you've always been a goalie, haven't you? At heart.
I know. I feel like a defenseman.
Okay.
But maybe the goalie chooses you. You don't choose the goalie.
When we talked to Scott last year and he goes, there are some goalies out there.
Yeah.
It's not up to them.
No.
It's not always up to who it is if you're a goalie or not. Meghan, like I said, you looked good out there. And I think people are going to be surprised at the leather that you were flashing out on the ice. And it was the celebratory puck drops after that were just sending me.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Megan, all right. So as we were arriving to the rink, news was breaking. Joel Kiviranta, 1 year. Right now it's being reported at a 1.25 AAV. And this is one that, Megan, I put out a tweet saying I did not like it. And I knew that wasn't going to be overly popular. Avs fans really grew an attachment to Joel Kiviranta last year when he overachieved in the regular season. And we joked a lot throughout the year last year and give full credit where it's due. Joel Kiviranta turned in a very productive season for the Avs last year, not just in point totals, but he filled in a lot of areas. He was majorly exposed in the playoffs. And I look at this move, and at face value, it does not solve the problem that the Avs are facing. And we're going to unpack it a lot more. For me, this wasn't the move to make at this time with where the roster sits. I'm not going to put you on blast with what your initial reaction was to it, but now you've had a couple of hours to sit with it. Where you at? Joel Kiviranta, 1 year, 1.25 back with the Avs.
This is probably the softened version, but I want to be authentic to my initial reaction too. And immediately not in love with it, with the caveat, I believe this is absolutely money Kiviranta could have commanded with another team. It's his fit on this team specifically that concerns me. And it's even less to do with the money specifically, but rather the third line issue that I keep going back to. I keep going back to the need to support Ross Colton with offensively minded players. And what Joel Kiviranta is, in Jared Bednar's own words, is versatile. And that shouldn't have a negative connotation because it's obviously a strength of Kiviranta to be as compatible as he is with everybody. He is such a neutral component, though. And so he's inoffensive in that he's not going to hurt a line, and he's going to complement that line to a degree, but he's not necessarily going to move the needle of a line. And so I want more for Ross Colton and what that third line can be. And so to me, I view Kiviranta as a wonderful depth addition for a fourth line, but they have a fourth line in Drury and O'Connor and Kelly. And, they've extended Kelly, so that's going to be a future option. And I'd like to see them, especially with what this next year holds for Drury, consider re-signing that player too, to resolve kind of just down the middle, have that be a solid aspect of this lineup. And so on wing with Kiviranta, it's just less of a priority, though depth is important. And maybe too, this points to a lack of trust in the internal options at the start of the year, because O'Connor's not going to be available to the Avs to start the year. And so this is a great player then that they can have in the lineup on a nightly basis in maybe a couple different roles, whether it's third or fourth line flex. But for a long term, end of the season playoff contending team, this doesn't move the needle for me, because now with $3.5 million left to spend, you still really need to complete this third line, and it needs to be with more high skill players that can better complement what Ross Colton would like to do offensively. And I just don't know that that's Kiviranta's game. And, I'll acknowledge that he has a career high in points and goals. His ice time's even the highest it's ever been. His shooting percentage higher than it's ever been. And I'll credit him with being important in big moments in the season where the team was maybe struggling with production, especially depth scoring. Kiviranta did step up in those moments. I specifically think back to the Live Moods night and the San Jose game. Kiviranta came through, and so
throw that super chat up right there.
Is it part of it?
Liv knows his name. If you know, you know.
I still am obsessed with this moment. Iconic. Good for Kiviranta. Can we get a Kivi chant going just for old time's sake?
The green lights are going.
Kivi, one excellent teammate, hard worker. There's so many things to like about Kiviranta, and he's a pretty solid two-way player that helps to round out their PK unit. There's totally value
100%
in what Kiviranta is. I just don't know that in terms of what's least represented in the forward group right now, Kiviranta was what was calling out. And so it's not that I hate it. It just still leaves me wanting exactly what I wanted for the Avs yesterday. It hasn't really addressed my pressing concerns that I see for this team.
And that I couldn't agree more with what you just said. In a vacuum, if you're closing your eyes and not looking at anything else, and you say 1.25 for Joel Kiviranta, and you have this much money left, you're like, oh, okay, that's really not bad. That might be a good deal. And then you take your blindfold off and you look at the rest of the roster. And for me, because of what we saw out of that fourth line last year, Jack Drury, Logan O'Connor, Parker Kelly, when you get to the playoffs and you're healthy, for my money, you're hoping Joel Kiviranta isn't in the lineup come round one, game one, that your fourth line is what I just said, and that you've bolstered that third line. So to your point, I don't, why spend this money now on a player that you're hoping isn't in the lineup come the end of the year? I get, Logan O'Connor is going to miss time until about Christmas. You need that fill-in. Yes, you need to add to your depth. To your point, the internal options, the call-up options aren't great. I was texting Evan Rawl on the way over here, and he was pointing out, like, you're kind of talking about the Proshepov, Ivan type guys, without this kind of signing. It's like, okay, sure. But to me, those are all temporary solutions, because in my opinion, you were hoping to get at least one more real quality middle six guy into the fold. And then we're going to have to do a little bit of a song and dance for the first month and a half of the season, 2 months of the season, while OC is out with, a couple of these call-up guys, and we'll figure it out. To me, you just spent $1.25 million to do that. And that's where I just don't, it's not Kiviranta, the player, that I don't like, even though I do think he's a player that's due for a big step back, especially in terms of production. He's just a player where it's like, it's redundant. You've got three of those guys, but better on your fourth line. And you saw what he was when you tried to make him a third line player. He got eaten up and swallowed whole by the Dallas Stars for 7 games.
He wasn't an offensive difference maker. And I'll give some credit to that third line going back to the Winnipeg series, the playoffs before it, with Miles Wood, Ross Colton, and Kiviranta. I think maybe that's where there's some hope from the front office in what Kivy can be in the playoffs. Is he was a lot more of a difference maker, I believe, in those playoffs than what we saw this last season, which is a bummer. And so here's where I also maybe have a little bit of issue with it. This was a very painful exit for the Avs this season, and a big issue around it was their inability to put the puck in the back of the net. They needed players that were going to step up. And I think Kiviranta is too safe. I think he's exactly the type of player you're trying to move away from. And you're looking for more difference makers than when in the playoffs, when the margins for error are thin and the ability to convert offensively is that much more difficult because teams are giving you their best defensively. You want a player who moves the needle then a little bit more offensively. And Kiviranta just isn't that. And so it does feel like it's just kind of settling with this old version of what you are instead of aspiring for better. And there's nothing wrong with, the old version of the Avs of last season on paper. But you see an execution where it hurt them.
The glaring hole, in my opinion, that ended up really hurting them. And again, Joel Kiviranta was the player they ended up plugging in there, but it was literally the position that Joel Kiviranta was playing. That was the spotlight where it felt like the roster,
the third
was
line
exposed.
Was the weak link.
And it's like, you're not doing anything to address that with this move. You're adding a 13th forward, and there was a lot of conversation on Twitter. People saying, Jesse, you don't know what you're talking about. He had 16 goals last year for $1.25 million. 16 goals. You're crazy. That was a far outlier of a year, I believe. And let me double check.
I have it in front of me.
Well, was that the first year that he played a full year in the NHL with no AHL time? Or did he have one more season with Dallas where he wasn't bouncing back?
He had a 70-game season with Dallas.
Okay. But like, just so everybody knows, this is a player that'll be 30 years old this season, who has been an AHL, NHL tweener his entire career, low production, and he kind of scores in bunches. Joel Kiviranta, even last season, went large stretches without producing offensively, and then he'd score 5 goals in 5 games. He'd have a hat trick in the game. Like the 16 goals from last season, in my opinion, it's part of the reason why it took him going back to his old club at less money than what he originally wanted on August 8th. Him and his agent went out to get 16 goal scorer money, and teams around the league were saying, no, that is not what you are worth. And again, I am not saying Joel Kiviranta does not have value. I think he contributed in a positive way all over the ice. But we have to remember, I saw a group of people today slam dunking on everyone with the analytics of how good Joel Kiviranta was. And a lot of these same people were calling for him to be, quote, fired into the sun the season before he kind of went crazy in the playoffs. My point is, this is a player that we don't really know what it is. So for people to lean on, he had 16 goals last year and he was super productive and he contributed a lot. It's like, right, in an outlier career year where, again, he was put in some favorable matchups and stuff like that. But when the rubber came to meet the road, he was a ghost. He was a net neutral at absolute best. And so again, my point is, it's not that I have an issue with Joel Kiviranta. It's not that I have an issue with the deal in a vacuum, but you have an area on this roster that needs to be addressed. And I just think you made it a little bit more difficult for yourself to address it with this move right now. If Joel Kiviranta was literally, make him sit out, PTO him, get the rest of your roster resolved. And then, you know what I'm like, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I don't get why this was well, we got to do this first. Like the Avs are in the exact same problem right now that they were this morning.
I just really, I'll feel differently about this because the money isn't that bad. And the player obviously has value to the team, but now they're more limited in what they'll be able to do to add to this third line. Mm-hmm. And so I'll reserve total full judgment of this until I see what they decide to do with this third line. Because the other part I want to introduce to is Bardakov's role in all of this. This is a player that I think he couldn't come in and be as reliable as Kiviranta is for this group. But he is expected to come in and play some sort of depth role, especially in the absence of O'Connor to start the year. And so it just points to me maybe of a lack of confidence in this player who Chris McFarland, who has volunteered, brought up in conversations as being a part of the bottom 6 for the Avs going into next year, at least in consideration. And so I guess I'm just curious. Then where Bardakov and Kiviranta all fit into this, because to me, Kiviranta is kind of the 13th forward late in the season when people return to health. That's a very reliable guy that you can turn to. Is that not what Bardakov should be? Unclear. And that's up to Bardakov to demonstrate. It just gives them some insurance, I guess, behind this player who's a bit more untested than at the NHL level. Again, you really get a lot of value in the reliability of what Kiviranta is. It's predictable, and Jared Bednar's quite familiar with it. Mm-hmm. He's always liked having his safety blankets. Mm-hmm. And so this might just be new JT Compher light in that sense. But typically, when you send
JT Compher like crazy light, extra double light.
Maybe JT Compher
diet
current
light.
Era. Yeah. Just kidding. That's mean. But in terms of this being a guy that you turn to and can put on the ice, it just doesn't have the same impact as the other security blankets of years past. So
once you're healthy, what is it that makes you say we have to have Joel Kiviranta in the lineup? And to your point with Bardakov, okay, so now you've got 2 13th forwards.
And maybe that's the panic around this is the Avs have seen what it's like when they lose players.
Team JTC.
And maybe, it's to have some just an insurance in the middle 6 with Gabriel Landeskog. And, maybe it's to help have a rotation of players to make it so that Landeskog's game schedule, whatever ramping him up to regular season play looks like, if that means a couple nights off here and there, you've got a lot of options then. Maybe it's something like that, Gabriel Landeskog insurance. And that I wouldn't say translates correlates directly Kiviranta to Landeskog being the player that rotates up into the top 6, but it helps to start moving some of those pieces, right? Maybe it's a Ross Colton that's being elevated, and Kiviranta and this mysterious third line.
And here's my issue with it all. There's a couple things you said, right as something came into the chat saying safety blanket. This is my issue. You just made it really easy to heap, not you, to heap more responsibility on Joel Kiviranta when you have seen it does not work. It does not work. You had such a good fourth line by the time that the season came to a close. Jared Bednar talked about it. Chris McFarland talked about it. Those players talked about that chemistry working together. We saw Joel Kiviranta show signs of life in the playoffs season before by being just a spark plug fourth line player, difficult to play against, hounding you in your back pocket. That is not the role that's available for him when this roster is healthy. And that is the issue with it. People need to stop looking at the signing in a vacuum and saying, yes, Joel Kiviranta, good bottom 6 player, good signing. There's not the room for him. He's not a third line player. He's not a middle 6 guy. But now, to your point, if this is what you're going with, you're putting yourself in a situation where Joel Kiviranta is going to have to be a middle 6 guy and play over his head again. And you're not addressing the issue with this deal. Now, to your point, I am fine to reserve judgment and wait to see what happens. What else they're able to fill out with this move, after this move, excuse me. And then we'll revisit this. But if this is the third line move, it's wildly disappointing. And yes, I know he wasn't going to take a PTO. My point was, if he was still sitting out there in the middle of August, that probably tells me he was going to be sitting out there at the beginning of September. So I would have liked to see a more solid middle 6 player brought in before you start going around with the luxuries of, let's go get a really good 13th forward.
This does feel like a luxury, and in identifying the Avs needs still on that third line, it just doesn't seem like one they could have afforded. But again, I'll reserve judgment until I see how they actually round out that third line.
Yep. And again, it's not that Joel Kiviranta is a bad player. He's, like I said, I do just think it's funny that from one year to the next, fans really went from get this guy out of town. He had a good playoffs. And then it was like, he's suddenly this fan favorite you can't say anything bad about. His body of work is all over the place. And at 30 years old, it is not safe to bank on he's going to build on that and shoot at 20% again this season.
I can't wait to put him at the top of the pyramid, you guys.
Yeah, I bet you can't.
We're going to cycle this pod back and just loop Jesse dunking on Kivy. He's going to be top of our pyramid.
And hey, I would love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong on this, that Joel Kiviranta at 29 years old and as a 5-year veteran of the league, AHL, NHL in-betweener, that something happened this summer. He went back to Finland, and he's going to come back as this bona fide 15-goal third-line guy. But I don't know. I spent a lot of time watching hockey, and that just typically doesn't happen. But I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I wish I had, what would give me more excitement around it too is what's going to help Kivy to sustain his production going into next year. And maybe that is Ross Colton, right? Like maybe they find some kind of magic again, because they did play well together in the Winnipeg series the year before. So
sure.
Maybe because the other part of it is I could kind of look at aspects of last season, that opportunity that benefited Kivy, that I'm just looking ahead, and because there's too much of a mystery, I don't really know what talent is going to be around Kivy to support him and then realistically bank on him repeating the production of last year, unless it's a big year from Ross Colton. And I just get more and more nervous around the mystery of what next year can hold for Ross Colton, because I want it to be a big thing for him, and I want it to be a big step forward. And I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential in this player, and I just don't want to see it wasted either.
Yeah. Like I said, he's a He's a fun player. He's a little bit of a spark plug, and can do some good things, but just doesn't really move the needle in a meaningful way. But hey, that's why you're able to get him on August 8th. And that's why I was a little bit surprised that it even came in over $1 million because it's August 8th.
Yeah, I don't want to be picky about the numbers, but it's like 115. I don't know, 125 versus 115.
I would have liked it at 995.
995
or $1 million at most.
I see $1 million as maybe where I would have believed it when it came through on my phone and been fine with it. And I know 125 is like such a small difference comparatively.
But like we've seen, when you're a cup contending team and you get to the trade deadline, you need every dollar.
And I just look at how well constructed the Florida Panthers are, and that's really hard comparison to draw here, but they did not punt on their third line. And they have put themselves in an intriguing position where I still think they're very competitive going into next year, with decisions looming over Evan Rodriguez, of course, that they still have kept so much of this core intact. It's kind of disgusting, right? So I think that just the contrast of knowing where other teams around the league are at with respect to their top 9, for example, and seeing the importance of it too, and seeing the struggles, for example, that the Avs have had on the PK coming out of this series. Like, that's an area of the Colorado Avalanche that needs to be better going into this year. And Kiviranta can be a part of that, but was also a part of the reason why it wasn't as successful in the playoffs. Not the sole reason. I have other qualms with the PK that don't hinge on Kivi's shoulders. All that to say, it is hard to have a strong top 9. I see too going around the league, like the teams that are at the bottom of the standings don't have the depth.
Right.
And I'm just a little bit nervous about where the Avs depth is on August 8th.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we go. Another one. Vaguely again.
Rare earth magnet money.
What is it? What, I can't see the first. Oh, more rare earth magnet money for GS Arts and Crafts Department. Yeah, we do. The off season, as slow as it's gone, is suddenly going quick, and we need to get things ready for next season. And again, I just want to circle back. There's a comment that says Jesse has had Kivi hate since his PTO days. I want to remind everyone, because recency bias is a hell of a drug, Megan. That was everybody had an issue with Joel Kiviranta 2 seasons ago. He was not good, to the point it became a running joke in the press box that first game that he came out in the playoffs and suddenly played 180 degrees the other way. Playoff Kivi? That became like a running joke in the press box. Like, oh shit, are we getting playoff Kivi tonight? Because if not, he's terrible. And so I just have to point out, I don't know at what point, maybe it was the double empty net hat trick game last year, when suddenly this entire fan base shifted to, this guy's a great player, no one's saying anything bad about him. And I'm going to blame you a little bit.
No,
I'm totally kidding.
I think you've been a little hard on Kivi prior to this. Like,
totally.
I don't feel the same about Kivi. His regular season was just not very impactful like a year ago.
2 seasons ago, yeah.
Yes.
100%.
And analytically, like, his hits per 60 has always been high. And it was something that I even found myself a little bit curious about, just because the quality of the hits I didn't find as impactful as that overall number at the end of the night. But I felt that was better reconciled in this last season, and his on-ice impact was more apparent to me.
Absolutely.
And I like that. I keep saying inoffensive, and I mean it in the sense that he's not a liability. Right. He's not doing things to actively hurt you.
You're not just hoping to survive while he's out.
So that's how I felt about Kivi from the jump, though I've wanted more. I've wanted him to have more of an impact. And so this last year, I think it was obviously better than with some of those batches of production when the team was struggling with that scoring. You know, it punctuated then. There's more importance here. And him being a guy that can eat up minutes on the kill is obviously significant too. So I don't know that I have agreed, with the harshness of, are we getting playoff Kivi or this crappy Kivi? Because I just never thought there was a crappy Kivi. I thought his baseline was just very neutral.
See, I think 2 seasons ago he was bad.
I know you do.
I think he was a net negative 2 seasons ago. And again, I want to make sure.
Pobrecito.
I think, God damn, another one. It is Friday. Hey, you guys are buying me out on this Friday. I am sure the other moves that get made will make this make sense. I have faith. And Megan said it, and I'm in full agreement. I will as we did with the Mikko Rantanen deal, you got to reserve judgment till you see what happens next. This is not the only thing they're doing, but I will say, if we hit the start of the regular season and this ends up being the move they made, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. This is not a needle mover, especially in the middle six. To me, this is a Logan O'Connor fill-in until Christmas, and then I don't really know what you do with it.
It was interesting. Someone in the chat earlier proposed this idea that Drury's elevated to the third line, and Kiviranta is on the fourth line. And now I'm just not sure who's centering the fourth line.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like
Ivan.
It's when you. And
I don't hate it. No,
but if you're gonna do Ivan, why are you bringing back Joel Kiviranta? That's my whole point. This guy, he just does not make sense with what they have. He does not make sense. He's not that he's a bad player. It's not that he wasn't productive. It's not that he didn't contribute last year. He doesn't make sense when this roster is healthy.
Maybe this is all about giving Ivan his time in the sun.
Because now you're talking about elevating Jack Drury above where he should be playing when you know you have that fourth line that you really like. Like it does not make sense to try to shoehorn Joel Kiviranta into this lineup because vibes. Like, I'm just not sure. Like, I'm just not sure. I think he's a fine fill-in, and if he ends up your 13th forward and you can, maneuver to get that third line filled out by February, then who gives a shit?
Can I say something controversial?
Yes.
I am more comfortable with Jack Drury at 3C than I am with Kiviranta on the third line. Mainly because I've seen Jack Drury at 3C. It is fine. I would like to aspire for more in the playoffs, but I think he can handle that role in the regular season, and I would rather them just keep continuity with Drury, and OC, Kelly.
And that's my thing. If you're serious about chasing down a cup and you're putting it, like you just said, you look at Florida's top 9 and then the impact of that fourth line, like that's my issue with it. Is it's like that we already have fourth line guys that you're more comfortable elevating up the lineup than Joel Kiviranta. I just don't get this shoehorn to bring him back so that fans can chant Kivi. Another one. What does it say?
Vibranta.
I'm not really sure why. Vibranta. Why Vibranta?
Because he's a vibrant, loud player.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah. LOC out till about Christmas in answer to that question there in the chat. So again, right there, it makes sense. He plugs in on your fourth line while OC is out. Okay. Again, this is your 13th forward.
This is Jesse's 13th reason.
So I never got that reference, and now I hear you say it frequently, and it makes sense. Genuinely, let me ask you, for real, if you're putting the roster together the way you want it by the trade deadline, is Joel Kiviranta in your 12?
If you have a really cool guy for the third line, and so it's like Ross Colton, Kiviranta, and cool guy, fine.
Like Charlie Coyle?
Please don't say that.
But that's
It's
my
too
point.
soon.
That's my point.
Look,
the Avs did that in the playoffs.
But they had to. No, okay.
And got exposed.
To be fair, I think the absence of Ross Colton getting injured so early,
absolutely,
we'll never know. It's a big what if. It's
100%.
a big what if. Because we saw Wood, Colton, Kibby,
Ethan. Yeah.
Once upon a time in a Winnipeg series. Honestly, too, like that was part of Avs depth that Winnipeg struggled to keep up with. So
the fourth line?
Well, the Wood, Colton, Kibby line.
Yeah. Oh.
And so
2 seasons ago.
Two seasons ago. So that's what I'm saying is like you can talk me into Colton, Kibby, and cool guy.
You can't talk me into it without seeing it. But
I absolutely want to see it.
I love that for you.
Vibranta.
Cool guy. Yeah, shout out to that $1.99 from
noted
Ethan.
NHL player. Yep. Cool guy.
But I just don't think that if you actually build it up the way you want it, that he's in your 12 forwards on game night. I just don't.
I feel like this is such a dream scenario though, is okay, where where is the money? I don't know. Like, there's more money than that's being committed to that third line. That probably comes at the expense of somebody else then.
So here was something else that I saw in the chat earlier. Oh yeah, put that one up there. I messed up my super chat. It was blank. We'll throw in another comment. We'll throw you back up there.
I forgot I was
Ethan.
on screen. Sorry.
We'll throw you back up there. Oh shit. What was I gonna say? Kibby, fourth line.
Probably gonna be mean. I'm probably gonna keep bullying him.
Probably was gonna be mean. Yeah, wasn't the third line good with Colton? Then tanked with Drouin. Again, it was just that I thought he got so overexposed. Damn, I feel like
you know what I'll add too is I just feel like Coyle had kind of a tough Dallas series. I loved Coyle's regular season, but I think he struggled a little bit in the playoffs, and it's kind of hard for me to put my finger. He was especially struggling on the kill, I remember in particular. But all that to say, I don't even think we got Charlie Coyle's best in this think workshop we're doing. What am I trying to say? This thinking exercise we're doing. Yeah. I don't think we saw Coyle's best. So I'm still interested in Colton, Kivy, and Cool Guy.
I just don't think in any world Joel Kiviranta can be a third line player in the playoffs. I just don't.
I saw a world once.
I think what you're referring to was an effective fourth line 2 seasons ago against Winnipeg.
Who's the third line then? Why am I imagining them as the third line? I don't know. There's a different fourth line.
Let's find out. Damn, I wish I could remember what I was saying. Someone said something about like I want Cole Sillinger, and that just spurred a thought in terms of like other guys. It wasn't a Cole Sillinger thought. It doesn't really matter. First round lineup. Because yeah, this is gonna bother me too.
I can find it. We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. So I've got this box score pulled up.
This is
because you had Yakov Trenin. Oh, okay. Maybe you are right.
Of course.
So, because you had Parise, Cogliano, Brandon Duhaime, Ross Colton, Miles Wood, Yakov Trenin, Joel Kiviranta in your bottom 6.
Yeah. So I think it was like Duhaime, Trenin.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Now
I'm having second thoughts.
Kivy played the 4th least minutes in game 1 of that series last year. So I don't know if that.
I want to see later in the series numbers. I feel so bad that we're doing this live on air, you guys. How about we?
Damn, the super chat just keep going. Mike Peterson, what is the backstory? What did Kivy do to Jesse? He underperformed.
Whoa.
That's what he did.
Whoa.
That's what he did. No, I'm just kidding. Again, it's that I've always felt. And like I said, I don't have an issue with Joel Kiviranta, the player. It's that they continually ask him to play over his head. And I just thought that it became blindingly obvious in the playoffs that he just can't do that. So Kiviranta was a scratch by the end of the series against Winnipeg. Thus proving my point.
Did he get hurt?
I don't remember.
Because I remember too the storyline of
he played way better.
Revenge, going into the second round against Dallas. I'm going to go back into my Angley's angles.
But point being, this is it's a pretty whatever move. And the Avs still need to address everything that they needed to address. All right, so he played the least. He played 4th line minutes in game 3, and then did not play the rest of the way in the playoff in the first round last year.
And the other forwards like Colton and Wood
did play. They played more.
Did they play third or fourth line minutes?
Third line minutes, and they were more in line with Yakov Trenin, and then it was Parise, Cogliano, and Kiviranta going based off the minutes.
Okay, because I'm really going to base this off of Colton and Wood, and Kiviranta's role somewhere in there, because I know they played on a line together, and I'm confident it was at some point a third line, and it was effective.
The in game 3, Ross Colton 13:37, Miles Wood 11:41, Yakov Trenin 10:19, Andrew Cogliano 7:38.
He got a lower body injury in this series. What it was? Okay. Yes.
All right.
Jesse's just being such a hater, you guys.
Did he not? He didn't play in the last 2 games.
Because he got hurt.
I know. That was all I said was he didn't play.
He was a healthy scratch.
I did say that at first. And then you said, did he get hurt? And I said, I don't know. We got to look it up. See?
This is...
You always got to check your work.
Crazy.
Always got to
check your work. My work was good from the jump, y'all. I've been saying.
Y'all. I have never heard you say y'all.
All right.
Got the red cowboy boots on, and now she's yawling me up and down.
All right. Let's move on.
We'll talk about the Atlantic.
Yes.
Joel Kiviranta, I think, is my kind of final thought.
Now I'm... See, Jesse, I think we were in agreement on Kivy, but then...
I think we still are. I'm
now I
feel
about super defensive of him. You know? Right.
I think we still feel the same about it. I've been more offensive. You've been more inoffensive. R.E. Kivy.
Strong defensive player.
Absolutely. Like I said, he was a good player for them last year.
Stop the hate.
a solid contributor for the Avs last year. I will not argue that at all. The Avs still have a third line issue.
No, I agree.
So,
but just wait until we get cool guy.
Just wait, I guess. All right. We're going to go through a little bit quicker than we did a couple days ago, talking about the Atlantic Division. Gosh, who knew a healthy scratch 13th forward could take up 40 minutes?
He is in your mind.
The Boston Bruins, Megan. The Boston Bruins finished at the bottom of the Atlantic Division last season. They kind of looked like they made their decision. Yep, we're turning the page from trying to compete, trying to be in the playoffs to we are entering rebuild mode. They trade Brad Marchand, and right now there's murmurs out there that more big name players could be on the move for them this season.
What?
Pasta, you haven't seen that?
Oh, yeah. It's just like you can't afford to lose any more guys. You keep sending them out and not replenishing the holes that are left.
Yeah. So thoughts on the Boston Bruins? Are they destined for another finish at the bottom?
Well, especially if they move on from their biggest points producer in Pasternak. Yeah, he had an insane season, 43-goal season, 63 assists. So you lose a 100-point player. He's no Kiviranta, but you lose a 100-point player, and the issue is scoring depth beyond their top line. I think like 47-point Elias Lindholm's just okay. It doesn't inspire a lot when you're then comparing other top sixes, top lines around the league. And so I'm worried about the state of this Bruins group. Like Marco Sturm at the helm. I'm familiar with him more so in his time as a head coach overseeing the Ontario Reign. And I kind of think of the identity instilled in those Ontario Reign teams, and then to just some of his time behind the bench in LA. So LA's identity, I think, translates really well to what the Boston Bruins identity would like to be. I think losing some of the offensive talent obviously hurts their ability to generate. But I think they can be better defensively. And I think what is curious too is there's an emphasis down the middle for LA and that identity from that organization. That Casey Middlestat is where I'm turning to with curiosity then for what the Boston Bruins can be next season. At 26 years old, he needs to take a very big step forward. He held huge responsibility in Buffalo, struggled in Colorado, has this new opportunity to turn to a new chapter in Boston. And frankly, they're counting on it. And still their problems seem so much bigger outside of this. But I'd like to see them tried to adopt then this Marco Sturm, very Boston Bruins identity of being a gritty team that's hard to play against, because I think they showed physical wear and tear by the end of this last season. And it didn't help that Swayman had a very human season in net. And I think, too, some of that pointed to a morale issue. Like, I remember Zadorov kind of sniping at Swayman in post-game media availabilities, just because it did feel like there were some attitudinal differences at play in this locker room. And so I worry that in shipping out key players like Marchand, and even Brendan Carlo from the back end, Charlie Coyle, obviously, from part of their forward group, I don't think that they've recovered from the loss of these big impact players up front or from the back end. And I worry there's a little bit of morale issue at play. So really, for the Boston Bruins, my hopes are low. I just want to see them settle things going into this next year.
Yeah, a little bit more quiet. Real quick, we have one more super chat on Kivy, and then I remembered my thought on it. You're going to be awfully apologetic when Kivy somehow puts up a hat trick in the playoffs and sends a rival home. I know it's a reach, but it can happen. If that happens, Megan, I'll do the first 30 minutes of our show in the middle splits. How about that?
Just he's like been weirdly trying to get us to get him to do this.
Blake has been trying to get everyone that we talk is like, hey, do you think you can do the middle splits? Do you think you can do what will you do to find out if you can do the middle splits?
You tweeted, do you guys think I could do the splits?
Well, it's because me, him, and Chloe were in the office talking about it. What I was going to say was there was a comment that came through earlier that did say, which I do agree with, that come trade deadline time, if the Avs are healthy, that Kiviranta and that contract could be a piece that gets moved. That could be a trade chip for you come later in the season if your roster is filled out the way that, filling out the way you'd like it to, if that's a piece that you need to get a player back. And I do agree with that as well, that this may not be a, hey, we need this guy come playoff time. It's, we're going to need some help in the regular season while we're injured. And then if we get the right offer, if he's the right throw-in piece, it's a contract that can be easy to move. That was a comment that had come through earlier. I just wanted to give that a shout out because I thought that was an interesting
That's thought. Very reasonable of them. So I really like that take.
Yeah. So sorry, back to the Boston Bruins. I just want to make sure we got in that super chat and acknowledge that comment that had come in earlier. The Boston Bruins, let's take a look here. They have not really been busy this summer. Let's see. Nope. I'm with you. They are going into rebuild mode. It feels like they are in the moving out and not really bringing back in mode, but they've had a really good run. Like they had a really good run with that core from 2010. You give yourself 14 years of being in the mix every year, including a couple Stanley Cup final appearances to go along with it. You'll take that. It might just finally be time that they are going to hit that reset. I'm going to be curious to see what they decide to do with Swayman. That's a fresh contract.
Yeah. And, first year into it, 8 years, $825 million, $892 save percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Just a bit of a tough season. And look, there's a lot going on in front of him. I think a lot of drama around the team, from losing Monty as your head coach and losing some key players to include their captain and Marchand. It's a lot of change. So I think that their strength as a team, their mental strength, is going to be really tested next season.
They might be all right, though. Riley Tufte got re-signed.
So I was looking at their depth signings, like Tanner Jeannot, a player once worth 5 picks, and a roster player or prospect. And he had a 24-goal season with Nashville once upon a time, and his production has completely fallen off since then. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're taking a gamble that he can be the high-performing player that he was that one season in Nashville, but I don't know.
Shout out Mikey Eastamont, too. Colorado kid.
So I love this player. I think he fits the identity very well. Just a great depth player who plays with a lot of grit, a lot of heart. But when their issue is scoring depth beyond the top line, I think, you get past Morgan Geekie, Lindholm, and Pasternak, and I'm just really nervous for them.
You had Victor Arvidsson as well, but
he had a 20-goal season. Or a couple 20-goal seasons in LA.
He does feel very contingent on who he's playing with.
But he finished a healthy scratch rotation with Edmonton in the playoffs last year, to put that into perspective. And, everybody plays different roles on different teams depending on where they're at in their window. So he still had a 15-goal season with Edmonton last year, but very depthy additions. Depthier than Kiviranta.
Depthier than Kiviranta. All right, Megan, let's move up here to the team that just breaks my heart for their fan base every year. I don't know how you go this long without making the playoffs. I believe this is going on 14 years, and there is not a lot of reason for optimism for them this season. It's the Buffalo Sabres who, I make the joke from time to time, Megan, like really bad teams accidentally make the playoffs once in 10 years. The Buffalo Sabres have tried several times to build a roster good enough to get in. There is something fundamentally wrong with this Buffalo Sabres organization that it does not matter what they do, who they bring in. They just can't get it to work. Bowen Byram, there was a lot of chatter that he was going to be moved out. They end up getting him re-signed to a 2-year deal. He will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of that. My guess is they're going to move him at some point over the life of that deal. Connor Timmins gets added as well. I think a really nice depth defenseman. But my guess is it's not going to go well for him in Buffalo. I don't even know what to say about this team anymore, because it just doesn't seem to matter what they do, who's in the lineup, who's behind the bench. They just can't figure it out.
No, there's insane talent in Tage Thompson. I mean, even like a 36-goal season from Alex Tuch is significant to their top six. And I think that Zach Benson's a young player. But outside of those names, it's concerning. Like they'd probably like to see Jack Quinn take a step forward. 15 goals, 24 assists. Not a bad season. But when you're seeing how much of their offensive contributions are riding on these same two players in Tage Thompson and Tuch, you just want to see then Benson, Quinn take big step forwards. And what's intriguing to me too is less emphasis on that forward group that I think should be better than it is all around. Though the individual impact of Tage Thompson makes it so criminal then that this team continues to fail. But it's also this potential for this back end to be, in my opinion, one of the best in the league. And you look at some of the offensive contributions, it runs a lot through their blue line. You look at a near 40-point season from Byram, 40-point season from Owen Power, 17 goals from Dahlin this last year, over 30 points. It's so much production from their back end. You add that right-hand defenseman in Kessel Ring, bolster up that right side with another 30-point player, and you just need Matthias Samuelsson to stay healthy. This is another player that has had the ability to make more of a difference, but just can't stay healthy. And now we're looking at what should be a really competitive back end. I think that there are defensive mistakes across the board, coupled with some inconsistent goaltending. So I want to see Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen take a step forward. 887 in net. This is still, in my opinion, a young prospect. And here's what I like about the addition of Alex Lyon. It creates pressure and internal competition because Devon Levi, just said that weird, I think is still in the fringy territory of goalie development, of still being able to get in reps at the American League level. And so I wonder if that's felt by Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen too, that there's maybe less of this feeling that his job's going to be taken, his net's going to be taken from him. Whereas I think Lyon has a lot more experience, and this can be more of a 1A, 1B tandem and create a little bit more pressure then for Luukkonen. And I want to see that drive him forward in a positive way. I still think that this is a goalie that can take a little bit more of a step. All that to say, going on paper then, I think they round out their depth with the addition of Josh Stone. Losing Peterka's production is going to be then a hole to be filled, because as I just mentioned, like I'm kind of pointing to just two guys as being their offensive weapons, a couple of young players that I think can help, but this is a team that stands to have a lot more help from throughout the lineup. And this is where I just want to see their decor have more of an impact on the success of this team, because it should be better.
It should be. I mean, you have three top 5 picks on your back end, and then Connor Timmins, who should have been a first round pick and went with the first pick in the second round. But like it genuinely, it's almost to the point where like I really do wonder what is going on behind the scenes there. At one point, Megan, this was a team in the late 2010s that had a line of Jack Eichel, Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Reinhart. As recently as 2021, Jack Eichel, Taylor Hall, Sam Reinhart, Tage Thompson. Like, these aren't nobody names. They've done a good job. Another super chat. The Sabres, it says, Buffalo Sabres, an organization that continually commits crimes against hockey dignity.
Yeah.
I just, it doesn't make sense to me how they're this bad year after year. And it's not even like they just barely missed. Like, they're at the bottom of the standings every year, and it just does not make sense. To your point, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Bowen Byram. I like Connor Timmins back there. It feels like the roster is there every year. I like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
So I love Jason Zucker still.
I do too.
Like, it's harder to sell me on him still being a top 6 player. I think I'd render him more middle 6 at this stage in his career.
Yep.
But the kind of player that I would kill for the Avs to have in their forward group.
I always thought Jordan Greenway was overrated in Minnesota, but again, just a quality
in a depth
player.
Hard to play against. Big, strong.
Peyton Krebs, young player, still figuring it out, but another threat. Like, there are pieces here. And then
Josh Norris,
what you and I talk about all the time. I think Tage Thompson is underrated around the league. Like, this is an elite player that you and I have talked about, that had that been the player that the Avs had gotten for 2C, I think you're in a much different, you're having a much different conversation over these last couple seasons. But I don't know. The fans of Buffalo are fantastic. And I feel for them every year because this team just cannot seem to get it figured out. Any final thoughts on Buffalo?
I want them to be better. We say this every year. I want them to be better on paper in ways they should be better. I want to see them go seize it this next year. And similarly, I do want to see too a healthy season out of Samuelsson. I think that has a big impact on this team not being able to meet expectations, because one of their key pieces in their back end that represents something a little bit different from the other players is Samuelsson, and he's just been hurt a lot.
You know what I think could actually do them good, and I'm being dead serious when I say this. It was a theory I had when I was younger. I think they could use a rebrand.
That's interesting.
Freshen things up. Just, I really love that the throwbacks, the black and red throwbacks they've been doing. I'd love to see them do some type of rebrand, call back on some of that 90s stuff. But I think they're just an organization that I think needs a whole new fresh coat of paint.
I actually too, broad strokes, think they have an identity crisis. I don't think they know what they should be, want to be. Like, they have some really intriguing and good pieces to include what should be a lethal back end, but I'm still not sure how they want to deploy that.
Are we skilled? Are we tough to play against? Are we fast? Are we going to grind into the, exactly.
And how do we master
right
the one thing? Because I think all of that's kind of represented in this lineup in different ways, but how do they master an identity?
100%. So they need an identity overhaul. Megan, let's move on here. A team that really expected, I think, a lot more of themselves this season. And Patrick Kane is a perennial believer in the Detroit Red Wings for some reason. A team full of excellent third line players, Megan. What do you see for the Detroit Red Wings? James Van Riemsdyk, Ian Mitchell, Mason Appleton.
Ian Mitchell. Former DU guy.
They move on from Vlad Tarasenko. The big ad, John Gibson in net. Does that move the needle enough for you? Adding John Gibson in net, probably into the back nine on his career, once an elite USA goaltender. How much does that shape what you think of the Detroit Red Wings for this season? Does it not really?
It was a necessary move, I think, between Mrazek line. It's like they were straddling not having a bona fide starter and just needed to more so commit to it. And they
had tried Ville Husso. They had given the money. They had tried a few different guys, Lions, and you needed to
And so that's what Gibson is in a lot of ways. He's veteran stability in net, and he comes off the heels of a 912 save percentage, though only played in 29 games. Now that I point to, what was it, appendicitis? So that's not necessarily like this recurring injury that you suddenly start to worry about with goalies, but he was sub 900 the 2 seasons before. So I think, though this is a goaltender that I believe adds a lot of stability, he is, I think, entering that back nine of his career, so to speak. So I still think this is a bona fide starter. And it's a good piece of business then that needed to be addressed by this team.
Clearly an upgrade.
But there's still a lot of other issues. They had a league worst penalty kill this last year, and some of that was struggles in net. But I think you have a lot of overpaid, underperforming middle six forwards on this team. And that's going to lend itself to a struggling PK, overall team defense taking a hit. Because you look at the monster season that Larkin comes off of, DeBrincat, Raymond, and there are, talented pieces, Patrick Kane, another good productive season, that this team should be better. I think also what this boils down to is a decor that's just a bit too young for my liking. I love defensive prospects, and I think they've got a couple. Let's see. Yeah, obviously Mo Seider, Edvinsson, Johansson, and now Jacob Bernard Docker. But just it's very young. So outside of Ben Chirot and a little bit Eric Gustafsson, it's just maybe a bit too young. And so that's where I think where the team defense takes a hit is you just have a lot of players who are inexperienced.
Well, and this it reminds me a little bit of the late era Patrick Waugh Avs, where you just had this really weird mix of, players that you've added thinking like, oh, this gets us over the top. Oh, this gets us into the playoffs, mixed with your young guys. So again, just kind of an interesting mix, in my opinion, for the Red Wings, not old, but veteran and young.
Yeah, there's a lot of veteran representation in the forward group, which is where some of the problem lies. Like, you need more out of Comper and Kopp. And that's kind of my issue then with the whole of the lineup is you have a really young back end. So you need your forward group to be that much more responsible. And I think you also then need the scoring to be better distributed throughout the lineup. There's some work to be done with this team for me to believe in them being competitive.
Yeah. One of the teams they're going to have to jump is the Montreal Canadiens, who took a step, Megan, and this is a team that I think is putting together a really nice group, young, talented players. They are, in my opinion, in that phase, though, of like, this team could be a problem, assuming all these guys continue to pan out like this. And a guy like Cole Caulfield takes another step. Yuri Slafkovsky takes a couple of big steps. Nick Suzuki continues to round out the game that he has built. They do add Noah Dobson. That's a big add for them on the back end via trade. Joe Veleno was a depth add for them that I like. Nate Klerman, longtime Avs prospect. Capo Kakinen added as well. And Sammy Blais. Megan, I like this group a lot. Patrick Laine, and I think Patrick Laine is he fits in really well here. He can kind of just be one of the guys. Patrick Laine, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Yuri Slafkovsky, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, Ivan Demidov, Oliver Kapanen, and Joe Veleno, Jake Evans. It's a young group. Then you have Noah Dobson and Caden Gooley, and of course Lane Hudson leading the way on the back end.
I love the addition of Dobson because I think Lane Hudson's success this last year kind of pointed to how this can be better utilized in the identity of this team, having production start from the back end. And so I love the direction then they're moving in, leaning on Hudson and Dobson from the blue line out. And I look at this group, young, exciting. I'm really intrigued by the goaltending too, because I think it's very solid. Montembeault comes off his heaviest workload yet as a starter with a 902 save percentage, and the very limited showings of Dobis was very encouraging, 909 save percentage in 16 games played. And so their goaltending pipeline is very promising, and it's pretty young. And so I think that it can be a steady part of Montreal for many years to come. And so you've got these young players then, like I want to see a full season of Ivan Demidov, and I want him to have a breakout year in his first full NHL season. So they've got these young players then in this lineup that I think their window is a bit out. It's not too far off on the horizon because they still have mature players like Nick Suzuki coming off a 30-goal season. I'm kind of heading it up. Caulfield now a little more experienced in this league, continuing to be an impressive, their goal leader on their team with 37. And Line, a player that I think you're right, fits this group really well. Full healthy season from Line, and I think he just complements then what some of the more experienced, talented players are doing to help pave the way for some of these young players that are a part of this Montreal group. And
he can just sit there and rip pucks and not have to worry about.
Yes, the pressure of what his role needs to be in Montreal is a little bit lessened. And so, I have some concerns about the overall newness of the group, the youth of this group, but it's also exciting, and I think it's decently balanced. I'm just looking at a player like Newhook, who at this point is among the experienced of the players that I'd like to see take that next step forward. And I think
that's really, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's been disappointing.
This was a really rough year for him in Montreal. Really and Gouli's another one that I think over 3 seasons, he's been really consistent in what he is. And he had a leg injury kind of hamper some of what he was capable of this last year that I think you see in his production and his minutes. It's very steady. So I just love to see a fully healthy season of him going into next year. If there, with all of this put together, is another gear for him to take then, because I like that as such a young player, he's been so consistent. And I just want to see him take another step.
Puckpedia currently has him about $6 million over the cap. And I'm, there's a couple players on there that I'm sure, will be AHL players with Laval. But they will have to do a little bit of gymnastics to get themselves under salary cap. They also have the 10.5 million for Carey Price that will go to LTIR.
Only other thing I'll say is when I look at the personnel in this group, I think it should have a better power play than it did this last year. It was kind of a middling power play. I think they have the personnel to be more of a threat on the man advantage. And so that's the other thing in terms of my hopes for Montreal next year.
All right. This is a team that you talked specifically about yesterday, Megan, saying, I don't know what to make of them. And I tend to agree with you. The Ottawa Senators, again, kind of doing the let's keep it intact as they finally break through and make the playoffs last season. They do add Nick Cousins and Lars Eller via free agency. They also pick up Fabian Zetterlund in a trade right at the end of last season with the San Jose Sharks. And then this summer, adding Jordan Spence to their back end, getting him from the LA Kings. It's not that I don't believe in this group, but if I'm picking any team to get caught by one of these teams on the outside looking to get in, for me, it's the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I spent so much time agonizing over how I feel about
Megan
the Ottawa
looked
Senators.
Actually stressed in the office yesterday, and I was like, Megan, are you all right? She's like, I don't know what to make of the Ottawa Senators. Like, oh shit.
I'm not even sure they're real. No, I'm just kidding. I know they're real. So here, like in the regular season, they're pretty good in a couple different areas, though I'm not seeing where they excel. For example, they lack an 80-point player. And I think it's kind of critical for every contending team to have at least that guy represented, that superstar. But they had pretty decent scoring throughout their lineup, which is also a hard thing for a lot of NHL teams to achieve. And so I don't want to fully take away from that, but I do worry that not having that kind of player that can completely take over a game probably hurts them, because I do think what was exposed for Ottawa, first and foremost, almost every team in exploring this that struggled in their playoffs had a power play that dried up. And that is true of the Ottawa Senators as well. Only converted on 3 of 15 opportunities in their postseason run. And so that is the issue then of translating success in the regular season to postseason too. And I point to a little bit of inexperience with that. And so when I look at the core players who I turn to as leaders of this group, like Stützle and Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson, I think they fell short of meeting the expectation of leaders to get their team over the hump. And some of that is just a lack of experience in being there. And so I think that happens. It's built with reps and the scar tissue, but I'm still a little unsure of what to make of this group. Like a player like Batherson, who at this point, 27 years old, taking undisciplined penalties. It just pointed to maybe a maturity, a growth point that Ottawa needs to undergo going into this next year, because there were some decent things that they put together this last year. I just have them as kind of a wild card fringe team.
Yeah.
And they need to put the reps in.
No notes. And since we're running long, we'll just keep moving because
perfect.
Are the Sens even
Friday.
real?
Whoa,
it's Friday.
Are the Sens even real?
I'm going to skip the next team for a reason. We'll circle back to them at the end, but they'll be the one team that we don't go in standings order. But that means we're going to jump to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Megan, a team that I think a lot of people had started to say, like, okay, they're on their way out, not really much of a threat anymore. And in my opinion, they pushed back on that in a meaningful way last season. I thought their play got back closer to kind of what had been come to be expected of them over the last 5 to 10 years. But it became pretty evident once the playoffs got started that they are the roles have reversed. They are the little brother in Florida, as the Florida Panthers kind of bullied them around. Quiet offseason for them. They make a prospect swap. They send Isaac Howard to the Edmonton Oilers. Sounds like that just really wasn't going to work out for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Jacob Peltier, they add via free agency. Scott Saborn.
Gross. Just kidding.
Ryan Fanti, again, just a lot of depth guys, not a lot of, flashy additions. This is another team that's going to be near the cap. They currently sit with 1.18 in space. Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Jake Gensel, Anthony Cirelli, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gord. We all know the story here. Victor Hedman, and of course, the man in net, Andrei Vasilevsky.
Vasilevsky, still very good goaltender. I'm glad that remains true. Because we were talking about New York the other day, and still great goaltender in Shesterkin out there, still great goaltender in Vasilevsky with the Lightning. So I'm impressed by their ability to kind of hang on in this way. They're weaker comparatively to the well-constructed Florida Panthers, but they are also so much more removed from their window. And so for them to have stayed as strong in their construction as they have, I do believe is impressive in this cap era. But there are obvious weaknesses here too, and some of that also points back to the power play. It dried up for Tampa as well, 1 for 16 in their series, and very poor play at home. I think what's interesting about this team is they have a very sturdy veteran back end, but they don't get much contribution outside of Hedman.
I still think he's so good.
He is 66-point season and such a reliable defenseman. He's one of my favorite players. I also love Anthony Cirelli. So I have like my special little guys on Tampa that I do really love. So this back end's interesting. Like, you're not really counting on it then to be a conduit for offense, though Hedman still remains incredibly good. So that top 9 makes up for it in a 121-point season from Kucherov, and strong and good seasons from Jake Gensel, 80 points, Hagel, 90 points, Point, 82 points. And then there's strength down the middle in all 4 lines. So that's where I want to say, when I'm saying this is still a pretty well-constructed team, it's still pretty hardy and sturdy to be so removed from their cup winning era. But the issue for me is they lack a little bit of the punch that they used to. Like, there was previously Mikey Asimon and a Corey Perry once upon a time. And I think even Stamkos kind of represented some of that meanness. And when I look at this lineup, there's things that I like, obviously strength in goaltending and a pretty reliable back end. And then up top, obviously you have some offensive weapons, but I think they lack a little bit of snarl in this current iteration.
Eric Chernak, another player on the back end that I like, that's, sturdy and just a solid veteran piece back there. But like I said, it's become pretty apparent that the Florida Panthers are the boss right now in Florida. All right, maybe the most talked about team, at least at the beginning of the summer, and the team, especially in the Atlantic Division, that I am going to be most curious to see what they turn in this season. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, the big one is Mitch Marner. Give them credit. Did not let him walk for absolutely nothing. They end up pulling off a sign and trade at the 11th hour with the team that everyone knew he was going to go sign with anyways. So they get the sign and trade done, and they get Nick Waugh in exchange. Good on them for finding a way to pull a quality every night player out of that situation right before Mitch Marner hits the open market. They also bring in Dakota Joshua and get out from underneath the obligation to Ryan Reeves. They also get Nick Robertson signed just a couple days ago, right before arbitration, but otherwise a relatively quiet summer. They got Matty Nyes and John Tavares both extended right before free agency opened. They're running it back as close as they can, but no Mitch Marner this year. That's going to have an impact in the regular season. But the question and the reason that I think that the Leafs were okay with the shakeup was Mitch Marner has historically struggled in the playoffs. So they're banking on, well, we're not going to be missing that much there.
And it's hard because that's a 100-point player.
Right.
And you still have the contributions of Nylander and Matthews, which are pretty huge, but the offensive contributions in the regular season matter a lot less in the playoffs. And so, the story of the playoffs for them was defensive collapses and big moments and cap heavy top end that was inconsistent. And so I kind of found, the performances of young players like Matthew Nyes to be more compelling. Nylander was incredibly reliable for them in the playoffs, but Matthews and Marner struggled a little bit. Still very productive players, but given the need for them to be more than that in the playoffs, I think this is an interesting offseason because I like the addition of Dakota Joshua. I think he represents that kind of gritty, hard to play against player that's annoying is a better word for him.
I like that they added
Matthias Michelli.
Oh man.
So I'm glad you mentioned him because I look at now Nick Watt and Matthias Michelli as being pretty good two-way forwards. And Michelli is an interesting player because he's only 24 years old, but we're talking about him like he's a reclamation project. And it's because he had a little bit of a stumble this last season. And so he was in this rotation of being healthy scratched part of this year. And I think it was to push more. But when I look at the high-end playmakers that are in Utah, and what Michelli is, it's kind of like how we've talked about Newhook or Oscar Lawson or John Lickfooty. Like there are certain players whose skill set is better suited for a top 6 role. And that is well represented in Utah. So the opportunity for Michelli to kind of steal out a job there, he struggled then in a little bit more of a depth role to keep the consistent production. And I think having, 57 and 49 point seasons ahead of or behind that, this is a player with so much upside, high-end playmaking IQ that I think that Toronto can tap into, but can be a better two-way player than I think, this last season, I just think was a little bit of a bumpy ride. I think there's a great player still in there.
I actually saw someone, granted it was Toronto media, so grain of salt, but they were talking about like that Matthias Michelli actually kind of plays a little bit like Mitch Marner, a light version, at least as of now. But I thought that was an interesting comparable to your point, just high-end skilled, playmaking forward who's going to benefit from playing alongside a guy like Willie Nylander, Matty Nyes,
totally
probably playing in their top 6.
And so this is where it's interesting too, is because I think too Michelli is a better two-way player than he gets credit for. And so I don't think he'll be a defensive liability. And I look at the year from Bobby McMahon, a 24 to 34 point player takes this big step forward. Can they get that again in the middle 6? And then the other player that I'm highlighting is Max Domi, who had some of his best showings playing alongside Matthews, but is that, going to be a little bit more of a competition? Can they get a little bit more from Domi, who, to his credit, I think had a better points pace in the playoffs than he did the regular season. So he at least took a little bit of that incremental step forward at the right time of the year. So I'd want to see that translate, though, into the regular season because they're going to be making up for ground lost in Marner, just in that top 6 altogether. And then I love re-signing Matthew Nyes because I think he represents a different type of player in this forward group that's hard to play against. And it was just a big sophomore season from him. More minutes, more points, impact player in the playoffs. I'm excited for what he means then for the future of this team because I do think they need that type of guy represented. We've talked about Toronto a lot too, but that's what it boils down to for me. And then with goaltending, because Stolarz got hurt, I think that Toronto has the chance to take a step forward. I know that sounds hard because we just didn't get to see Stolarz in net coming off a .926 save percentage season. Like it was a really strong season and he was injured early.
Michelli was a guy on my early offseason list that I had as a target for the Avs. I really like him as a player. We got another super chat from Vaguely, and I saw it earlier. 7,500 subs on the Gorilla Sports YouTube channel. Thank you all so much. If you haven't already subscribed, we'd love for you to do that. We were having really exciting conversations in here right before the show got started. We think we've got a big year coming up for you guys in terms of our coverage and our content, and we're really excited about it. So head on over and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you, as always, for the shout out, Vaguely Sober. Megan, let's round out this show today. A week of marathon shows. Sorry about that, John. John's been behind the board for all of our extra long pods this week.
Yeah.
But hey, it's the off season. The fact that we're able to come up with extra long pods, good for us. The Florida Panthers.
Oh my God, I forgot we had to talk about them.
Yeah, I skipped them because they finished third in the division, but this is the 2-time Stanley Cup champion. I don't really think there's a whole lot to say here, Megan. They got their players sold on, hey, if you want to win, this is your best chance to do it. A Brad Marchand deal that I'm still surprised the league didn't say something about. They get Sam Bennett done. They get Aaron Ekblad done. A team that everyone thought, well, hey, good thing you won it back-to-back years because you're going to have to tear it down. Ended up not being the case. They get all of their business done, and they are going to be gearing up, trying to make it 3 in a row.
Yeah, it's kind of sick how good they can still be, even with the future of Evan Rodriguez hanging in the balance.
Elliot Friedman reported this week they did a surprise pop-in 32 thoughts. He said the sense he gets right now is they see Evan Rodriguez as a very important piece of the puzzle and that he would be shocked to see him moved.
It's going to be a little bit tricky for them to do, but they kind of have every role filled at this point. So it might mean sacrificing some kind of depth. But they even, they replaced Nate Schmidt with Jeff Petrie, and it's a really similar player. I know that seems like a low hanging fruit, low end,
that's
but
all they have to do.
A hole is created, a hole is filled.
Right.
And it's filled in a way too that it feels very lateral to me. So it's not like, oh, they took this huge step backwards this summer.
Well, they're not going to have blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they're going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, they actually kind of have everyone, and it's annoying.
They've got to shed a little bit of salary before the season gets going, but it also sounded like there is some chatter that Matthew Tkachuk could be LTIR for a good chunk of the first half of the season, at least. If not
get Olympics ready.
Yep. So, like I said, I saved them for last because they won the Stanley Cup again, and I don't really have much to say. This is the model franchise right now. Everybody's trying to replicate.
No, it's true. I think there's an interesting conversation about Toronto's back, and we didn't even talk about them, but this is something that was interesting. I don't know where I stand on Morgan Rielly either. I still think he's a really great defenseman, but I don't know. He was a part of the reason too that there were some lapses, and I think having the veteran representation of Tanev and McCabe behind Carlo and Rielly, who interestingly too, I think that Toronto really likes Carlo and Rielly together. Kind of feels like what Carlo is a perfect complement for Rielly, because Carlo's name is one that sort of floated around, like, do they try to move him? And I think there's this concern of, well, we just found a play that we really think complements Morgan Rielly, because that top 4 on paper sounds like it should be really good, but I do think this was a weakness for Toronto, and it's hard for me to put my finger on it because I like each of these players, but I do think Morgan Rielly hasn't been leading from the blue line the way that I would look to him to be that in Toronto as the number 1.
Morgan Rielly to me is very Evan Bouchard, or the way that I talk about Matthias Ekholm. They're not the same defenseman at all, but that's a really good defenseman. You need a number 1 in front of him. That's a, shut down. You can put out there in all situations, going to kill penalties for you. Trust him in the last minute of the game. I think I'm with you. I think Morgan Rielly's really good, but you need someone in front of him for me to really believe in that decor.
Well, and I think what's tough is a projected version of Rielly should have been that. So I guess it's the question of, can he still be that? Or can
he stay healthy?
Yeah. Has that time come and gone?
Right.
And I don't have the answer for it.
Right.
I don't know.
That's up to Morgan Riley. That's going to do it for today and this week. We'll be back at it on Monday. Thank you guys for hanging out with us all week. We threw an extra show in there, and I think that we'll be keeping that going here probably the rest of the way, Monday, Tuesday, Friday. And then we got some fun content coming your way. We still have Nicole Hensley piece that we've been swamped here in the Guerrilla Sports and Guerrilla Capturing offices for the last couple of weeks. So we've actually got a backlog of some content that will be coming your guys' way. But big thanks to John, really, all jokes aside, helping us hold it down all week. We ran long on these pods. So really appreciate him helping us. Make sure you guys can see us and hear us. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Thanks so much, guys. Head on over, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Help us on our march to 10K subscribers here on YouTube. Have a great weekend. Take it easy, everybody. See ya.
Bye.